Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today, we are going to talk about Caterina Sforza. Usually, it's just me, but today I have my friend Erin with me. Hi, Erin.
Hey, it's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about Caterina Sforza.
She is exciting.
She
Lived a
is. She's a
crazy
fun
life.
time.
Did all of your other the people you've covered, are they all just as like militant and out for themselves as she was?
No, not all of them.
I'm glad you saved her for me.
Philippa of Haina was just very sweet and demure, very mindful.
Boring.
She was a perfect queen, but yeah, she didn't have a lot of crazy going on around her.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it very quickly, but Katerina didn't really have those kinds of luxuries like when she was in Rome.
Yeah. Caterina Sforza was born in 1463 in Milan, in what is current-day Italy, but at the time was the Duchy of Milan. To put this into the perspective of the timeline for my shows, over in England, Elizabeth Woodville was the new controversial queen consort. Mary of Guelders was the dowager queen in Scotland, but she was getting to the end of her life. And closer to Caterina in Italy, Rodrigo Borgia was a bad boy cardinal, and Caterina's father was the future Duke of Milan. The problematic future Duke of Milan. He had a reputation for raping everyone's wives and daughters. That
Wow,
was like
nice
his
guy.
hobby. Yeah.
That guy needs some other like aggression let out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was the Duke of Milan, so he was like, I basically own all the people in Milan, including your wife and daughter.
Hey, maybe try being a better owner.
Maybe. It does get problematic. Her mother was not the future Duchess of Milan because both of her parents were married to other people. Her mother's husband was a count and a member of the Milanese court, so he worked for Caterina's father. And he knew that the Duke was sleeping with his wife and fathering her children. It was
And
not
wasn't
even a
that
secret.
supposed to be like his close friends too?
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
friendly. He was a member of the court. He was like a employee slash friend.
Oh, okay. So he's still like a peon. Got it.
Yeah, because he's a count, and the Duke of Milan, dukes are more important than counts. So the Duke was sleeping with his wife, but he was like, look, if you keep giving me stuff like money, presents, lands, titles, that's fine. You
And
can
not
sleep with
killing
my
me.
wife. Keep having kids with her. It's fine.
And the whole not killing me thing.
Yeah. Despite being married to other people, both of them, they had 4 children together. So this was like a relationship. Those children, including Caterina, she was the second, were raised with their mother's family, their mother's mother, their grandmother, because they couldn't just show up at the court. Her father wasn't Duke yet. Her grandfather still was. So, you can't just be bringing your illegitimate children to your father, the Duke, and be like, hey. So she lived with her
These are
mother's
my
mother.
other 6 children.
Yes. But in 1466, Caterina's grandfather died, and this made her father the new Duke of Milan. Now he was head bitch in charge.
And pigeon, I want that title.
Right?
Yeah.
HBIC all the way. And her grandmother that she was living with had also died, so she needed a new place to live. And in Italy, bastard children weren't really hidden. They were like, oh yeah, these are my kids too, just from my girlfriend, not my wife. And so when she was 5 years old, her father remarried for the second time because he had lost his first wife, but again, not to her mother. This time to Bona of Savoy. And if that sounds familiar, I talked about her on a different episode. She was the woman who almost married King Edward IV before he got scooped up by the scandalous commoner Elizabeth Woodville. Okay, so now our girl Bona was marrying the womanizing tyrant-adjacent Duke of Milan, the I'll rape your wives and daughters and sisters and grandmas probably.
And
And
illegitimacy left, right, and center.
yeah, and she was Caterina's stepmother. So it's a small world. She was almost the mother of the children of the King of England, and now she's raising the Duke of Milan's children.
It's amazing how incestuous all those countries were, even though
Yeah,
they killed each
everybody's
other all the
related to
time.
everybody for sure.
Yeah,
Like,
isn't that what they say? Like royalty back then, like started to like get a
yeah,
little weird.
there were some birth defects and health
A lot of
issues
inbreeding.
that, yeah,
Yeah, got to keep it in the family.
yeah. And this time wise was a little early for the education of women. England wouldn't hit the Renaissance for another century, But Italy hit the Renaissance earlier because they're Italy. And Caterina was getting an education. She was a girl getting an education, and that was a new idea.
I thought that for that time period in Italy, women being educated alongside their brothers, at least in noble families, was more normal.
It was in Italy. A
It was
lot
in
of my
Italy, okay.
episodes take place in France and England, and the Renaissance hit Italy about a century before it hit England, maybe a little more than that. France was
Wow.
somewhere in the middle, so she
Well,
in
good to see it
Italy it
branched
was
out.
normal, but not in other countries.
Got it.
England wouldn't think that they could educate girls for another 100 years, at least.
Right? This is so boneheaded.
Yeah. Her education wasn't super Catholic or even super humanist. She was getting a Sforza education. And this included some humanism, but also riding, hunting, and fighting. She was kind of a badass.
Super badass.
Yeah, this wasn't a standard girls' education. The fighting, the hunting, the riding, that was what her brothers did, but she did alongside them. So she was even taught in war tactics, like just in case you have to lead an army and go to war. This is how you should do it.
Which was very beneficial. I didn't study thoroughly through her whole life, but I did see that there were plenty of times where she at least roused an army and threatened the
Yeah, she
Vatican.
she had confidence. She had confidence, and that's probably because she had an education.
Yeah, she had some chutzpah.
She knew how to run the army and the tactics with which she should take, and she was good at it. So it was good to be the friend of the Pope in 1471. If you were a friend of the Pope, you were golden. 2 years into this Pope, there was a man at Milanese court, the Pope's nephew. He was supposed to be betrothed to Caterina's 12-year-old cousin. They were negotiating the marriage, and the sticking point, the only thing they couldn't agree on at this point, was consummation. Because the bride is only 12. Her family was like, hell no. And the groom was like, we definitely have to consummate it right away. Even though the legal age in Italy was 14, and she was 12.
When I was reading about this account, the way they had it written out was just priceless. They said that, but the mother did not want to give in to demands of the groom.
Yes.
Like, why don't whitewash it? Come on.
Yep. She
Call it
was
what
like,
it is.
absolutely not. And
It's the
he was
mob.
like, definitely, that's part of the deal. And likely the reason was not that he was into 12-year-olds. Likely the dowry didn't usually have to start to be paid until it was consummated. It was more
Oh,
like
so
an
he's only
engagement. He
fucking
wanted the
children for
money.
money, not
Yes.
for.
He wanted
No,
that
that makes it
payday.
so much better.
It
That makes
doesn't
it
make it
so much
better, no. But he's just a different kind of gross.
better. Amen. Bless his heart.
They were at a standstill. Neither side was going to budge. The bride's mom was like, absolutely not. She's 12 years old. Wait 2 years, which still super young. And he was like, no, I would like you to start paying me money now while I go live my life. So gross. So
Super gross.
10-year-old Caterina Sforza was married to 31-year-old Girolamo Riario. And that's gross. Like, there was no one there to stand up for her. Her mom wasn't at Milanese court. Her dad was like, well, I have an illegitimate daughter. You want her instead?
Oh,
And
God.
it was consummated because that was the sticking point. So, ew. But even though she was 10, he then left to go live off that money. He just kind of hoarded around Rome and lived his life with that payday that he got. And she was left at home to grow up at Milanese court. In 1476, when Caterina was about 13, her father died. He was assassinated in a church on the day after Christmas. And this was when the 12 days of Christmas started on Christmas, so that was during the Christmas holiday.
So the
And
assassins were too busy with being family men on Christmas, but the day after they're free, so they got it done.
they were just like, well, we know where he's going to be the day after Christmas. He's going to be in church.
Yep, we're gonna get them good.
So we'll get him. And they did. It wasn't super well thought out, though, and the conspirators were soon captured and killed.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, they didn't plan this. One of the conspirators was tied to a board and then dragged by his feet by a horse through town, but his head was laying off the end of the board, so
Oh, brutal.
basically just bounce his head down the road.
Yep, till it bounced right off.
Yeah, or just bounced right in.
Either way,
Ooh.
what? How did they assassinate her father? Did they say that? Did they just like walk up to him in
Stabby,
church and say, "Hey, how you
stabby.
doing?" It. Oh yeah, okay. Kind of hard to hide who you are when you're doing that.
Yep, yep. Yeah, assassins were super common during this time, but they weren't super clever. Just like, hey, who wants to go stab somebody? I'll give you a lot of money, your
I'm not
family
doing
can live
anything.
off it. In 1477, Caterina was 14, the legal age to be married, but her husband was living his best life in Rome with the whores and the mistresses, and he didn't even send for her. He was just like, when she gets here, she gets here. It's fine, whatever. So she had made a plan. Her family had made a plan that she was going to go meet up with her husband. They were going to meet in Imola, which was the city that her husband had gotten as part of her dowry. So he got paid to
Is
marry
it the whole
her.
city?
Yes, Imola.
Wow.
But he was in Rome because he didn't want to live in Imola. He was just like, I mean, Imola is a good income, but it's not my vibe. So he had been in Rome with his Uncle Pope, and his Uncle Pope had been like, hey, word on the street is a whole bunch of people want to kill you. They kind of hate you. You should lay low for a while. So he was like, okay, fine. I'll just stay in Rome. So she went to Imola and he didn't.
Was this Pope Sixtus the Fourth?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so she got to Imola and they had all their festivities that were supposed to be for both of them, for they're getting married. This is a whole big event. She partied her ass off, but he never showed up.
For his own wedding.
Yeah, I mean, no wedding happened because he wasn't. His Pope uncle had been like, a lot of people want to kill you. You can't just be traveling around. Like, lay low. And he was like, okay. So he didn't show up. But the people loved her, and they were like, look at this fun girl. Like, she knows how to party. And eventually, she just got sick of waiting for her husband, who just was never showing up. And she's like, fuck it. I'm going to go to Rome, and I'll see him. And everyone was like, no, you can't do that. And she's like, no, I'm doing it. She's still only 14 years old. She's like, I'm sick of waiting. I'm going to Rome.
Very headstrong already. I like it.
Yeah, and Rome was not a safe place to be.
Kind of
So
like Seattle nowadays.
maybe worse. But yeah, that's the vibe. So she got to Rome to be with her husband, Girolamo, and their official wedding ceremony took place, and it was very, very Italian. It consisted of a 3-hour ceremony.
For a 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour.
Just the ceremony was 3 hours long. Kill me now. I like a nice, quick, short wedding. Like, just boom, married, done. 3-hour ceremony. And then a 5-hour banquet.
Ugh.
So this is like an
Why would
8-hour
they even
day.
want to do that?
Okay, I'm kind of here for the 5-hour banquet.
All right,
Because
all
the
right. Yeah, as
food
long
is
as there's
probably
more
pretty
wine, I
tasty.
guess it's
The
fine.
alcohol was free, open bar. And every 5 courses, there was a little show while you digested.
Was it an execution?
No, like singing or dancing or a little skit. I don't know, like little,
Then
like
the
digest
execution.
those 5 courses so we can bring out the next 5.
Ooh, I know. In between the next 5 courses, they could have an assassination.
Yeah, I mean, they probably did, like in the back room somewhere. Probably just like a pile of bodies. Like, add your dead to the pile. And Caterina was pregnant pretty much right away. She had Bianca in 1478 and Octaviano the next year in 1479.
And so, how old was she here?
She would have been
14?
15 and 16.
Oh, wow, that's young.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Married at 10. Married again at 14 to the same person. And then 15 and 16, she had kids.
I know it's not the same like timeline now as it is then, or like how kids grow up or anything. But my friend has an 8-year-old daughter. Trying to think about her being married in a couple of years is
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
yeah.
Like, insane. And over in England, it was worse. Over in England, the age was 12 for girls and 14 for boys.
Why is it different?
Because it was thought that girls hit puberty sooner.
Oh, right. So yeah, okay, right. That whole thing.
Yeah.
They're ready. Their body's ready. They're ready.
In Italy, they were like, no, they got to be at least 14. Like, 14 is a grown up.
Thank God for the Italians.
Right. Octaviano's, the new baby, his godfather, was the bad boy Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia, the gonna be
Oh, the
super
real corrupt
infamous
one.
pope.
Yeah.
He was her son's godfather. So they were close. They were friendly. She was like, hey, come be the godfather of my son. And now they aren't, it's kind of surprising that the Pope agreed to be the godfather of her son because they weren't really anybody. Like the Sforza family was pretty popular. Her dad was the Duke of Milan. But that's not the same as a king. And her husband was only even able to marry her because he's the nephew of the Pope. His family wasn't anything. He was like a shoemaker before his uncle became Pope.
Wow, that's quite a jump up for him.
So, and I guess his uncle is the Pope, so that's probably how he got a cardinal to be his son's godfather. But still, Rodrigo Borgia is kind of a big deal. I guess he was less of a big deal then. He was still just a cardinal. Nobody knew what he was about to do.
Was he the Pope after Pope Sixtus?
I think there was one in between them.
Okay.
But not very long, like 2 years.
Before he got assassinated.
Maybe. I mean, they die mysteriously often.
I'm just guessing that everyone got assassinated.
Yeah. I think there's like rumors that maybe it was an assassination, but it's not like confirmed. Like he might have just had a health issue.
Yeah, Tupac wasn't murdered. He
Right.
was just, it was just a rumor.
Yeah. Girolamo had received the lordship of Imola as a dowry when he married Caterina, but he never went there because, again, it wasn't his vibe. He was like, they can just send me the money, like I'm the Lord of Imola, but I don't need to hang out there. And in 1480, he also received the lordship of Forli from the Pope, so now they have 2 cities. The tradition for the lords of Forli was when they entered the town for the first time as lord, they would run around the square 3 times. And if the town accepted you, there would be a lot of cheering. But if they thought you were lame or like a dumb-looking runner, they could like just be silent. And that meant you were in for some trouble. They weren't going to accept you as their lord.
And that is how Duck Duck Goose got invented.
Yeah. How awkward. How awkward if you run around. I mean, my nightmare would be running around a square 3 times with a huge crowd of people watching, but it's going to be so much worse if they're silent.
Oh man, that would be like my ideal vacation. I would do the whole thing with my ass out.
The people cheered for their new lord. And for his wife, the Lady Caterina, she was beautiful and visibly pregnant with her 3rd child, her 2nd son, because she has 1 girl. She had her 2nd son and named him Cesare, which is the Italian form of Caesar, because she's naming her children Octaviano and Caesar, and she's got
obviously well educated in Latin.
Yes, that was her humanist education. They learned a lot of Greek and Latin, a lot of Roman history and stuff. So the new Lord of Forli was popular. He lowered the oppressively high grain taxes. They had a huge town festival to celebrate this no more taxes shit. They were like, yes, this guy's the best. No taxes.
We don't have to have a tea party.
Yep. A man came to stay at the Milanese court for a while. His name was Leonardo da Vinci. And word on the street was that she may have inspired the Mona Lisa. If you look at her portrait and the portrait of the Mona Lisa, they're very similar.
Huh. Really? That's interesting.
And she wasn't there when he painted it. He would have left her about 3 years before he painted it, 3 or 4 years before, but he had known her just a few years before. So she could have been the inspiration for the face. They don't look exactly the same, but there's similarities for sure.
Yeah.
So the Mona Lisa may be Caterina Sforza. So that's kind of fun to be the Mona Lisa girl.
Right. They've speculated who it be for quite a while.
Yeah. Nobody knows for sure, but I feel like he was, not with her. He had left her a few years before and he was like, I'm going to paint. And he just made it look a little bit like Caterina. In 1484, Pope Sixtus IV died. This wasn't just bad news because he had been the Sforza family's sugar daddy. He was also the uncle of her husband, the only reason her husband was a big deal. But also, when the Pope's away, and in this case dead, riot, total chaos. People went nuts. This was like they'd never seen a Pope die before. This was like full chaos in the streets of Rome.
Was Pope Sixtus, he was one that was pretty brutal to his enemies, right?
Yeah,
so
we're definitely getting to the corrupt. Yeah, we're definitely getting into corrupt Rome at this point.
Yeah, so the other noble family's like, all right, now we can get her back.
Yeah, they're like, oh, ho, ho. Open season on anyone we don't. It was the purge. It was the Italian purge.
To only have been there. I've got a list.
Yeah. Caterina decided she needed to take matters into her own hands. And at 7 months pregnant, she's 7 months pregnant. She's huge pregnant.
Well,
She
I mean,
took
she's
the
only like 13,
fortified.
so how big she can be?
She took the fortified castle of St. Angelo and turned the cannons pointed at the Vatican and just like kept an eye on them. Like,
This is my favorite part.
I'm watching you.
Let's aim some artillery at the Vatican and make them
Right?
listen. Bitch, do what I say.
Yeah, she's like, okay, we need a new pope, do we? Well, the last pope liked me, so let's hope the next pope likes me too, because my cannons are pointed right at your faces. Just in case the vote didn't go the way she wanted it to.
So this, there's some interesting points here. I thought the Sacred College of Cardinals had tried to work things out with her husband, thinking that that would like end the chaos.
Like, get your woman under control.
Everything's right. And so they gave him all these fancy titles and appointments and new land. And then they gave him 8,000 was it ducats or ducats? How do you say it?
Ducats.
Ducats, yeah. And I was like, well, how much is that worth in today's money? And so I went through a calculator to find out what it was worth. 3.5 grams of gold. A gram of gold was $60 US now, and so it comes out to almost like 1.7 million.
Oh wow! So he was like, "Woman, get back here! I have my $2 million." $2
million's enough.
Yeah,
no!
Like it's fine. The next cardinal will probably be fine, or the next pope will probably be fine.
Yeah, you don't really want to roll your dice on probably fine when
like they have 2 cities to think of. They gotta make sure they don't lose those.
Yeah, I mean, we could do way better than probably fine if we got all these cannons aimed at.
Yep. So they went to her husband and asked her to hand it over, and she was like, "Fucking A! Like, what the hell, Girolamo? Like, I'm trying to do my stuff here, and you're just getting in the way." But also, she's huge pregnant, remember? So she's just like, "Fine," and she left. She's like, "Fine, like, let them do whatever they want. Here's the castle back." And when she left wearing a man's belt so that she could have a sword in it. So she basically left like a warrior leaving an army. Like we just...
That's some swagger.
Yeah, we just came to a settlement. I am going to retreat back to my land.
Don't make me come back.
Yeah, and she's like 7+ months pregnant at this point. She's huge pregnant.
And this isn't even the craziest thing she's done militarily.
No, it's not. She's building up to her peak. She's just not there yet.
Yeah. No, you don't want to like dive in before you know the water's shallow or not.
The same year she had her other son, just like a month or two later, Giovanni, and then another son, Galeazzo, born the next year. So she's just having boy after boy after boy after boy, which was kind of the goal back then.
How many children is she up now? Is she at like 5 or 6?
I believe 5. So it was around this time that her husband started showing signs of depression. He had always been kind of heavier and just older, quite a bit older than her. And now he was fully depressed. And she started taking over more. She's like, okay, I have this education. I might as well use it. Don't worry about it. I'll take over.
You go be depressed in the corner. I'll take care of the kingdom.
Yes. And that same year, things were pretty bad. There was famine, and as it usually does when famine happens, the plague broke out.
So,
because when people start to die of famine and the bodies aren't disposed of properly, you get a lot of rats, and the rats have fleas, and the fleas have plague. So
it's a good thing that she was such an active chemist and had
yes.
so many ears for the plague.
She liked the plants. She really dug the plants. And yeah, Caterina didn't vacate the city. She went around caring for the sick and giving food and medicine to the poor. So she was like all about socialized healthcare. She's like, yeah, I'm the lady of this city, but I'm going to go be a nurse.
I got to give her props for that.
Yeah, for sure. Because the plague's scary. Like if we got the plague now, antibiotics would wipe it out. But they didn't have that then. So it was super scary.
Yeah, didn't it decimate like half of Europe?
It did. And around this time. And she survived. So yay for her immune system. She fought off that bacterial infection and it didn't get her.
Her water at talc worked out.
Mm-hmm. But things weren't going super well. obviously. Everyone was stressed out, and quite a few of the Milanese nobles weren't happy with her husband and his possible descent into madness. I mean, depression, but they would have just been like, what's wrong with him?
And there's also the high tax rate that he levied. And
Yeah, after he dropped the taxes, they ran out of money, and he was like, oh shit. Turns out we do need
I've got to
taxes.
balance the budget.
And then he just was like, okay, now we have to make up for lost time. So now it's Tax City. And people are like, wow, this really blows. Caterina was trying to hold things together, and all while having babies. In 1487, when she was 24, she had another baby, Francesco. And the following year, things hit a boiling point. Caterina's husband and Lorenzo de' Medici had a bit of a rivalry. Lorenzo the Magnificent. And by rivalry, I mean they were trying and failing to assassinate each other like every other day. It's like, oh shit, I missed. And then the next guy would go. And then, so they were both still alive, but they wanted each other gone.
And Lorenzo was who? This cousin? Second cousin?
They were related. He was a Medici, so he will be related to a future character in the story.
Okay, all right.
But they were enemies at this point. This was like Hatfields and McCoys.
All right.
So, but in 1488, that changed. Girolamo was successfully assassinated. Her husband, Caterina's husband, he was stabbed to death by at least 9 people, despite the fact that he had guards with him.
Brutal.
And then his body was handed over to a pro-assassination mob. Like the people who hated him, they were like, threw his body out a window.
Nice. Defenestrated.
Mm-hmm. Caterina gathered up her mother, 2 of her half-sisters, because they were all visiting, and her children, ages 10, 9, 8, 4, 3, and 1, and barricaded them all inside a room with her. She's like, we'll just have to stay in this room and not come out until it's safe.
Surprise, it's never safe.
Never. They weren't just going to stop like, oh, shoot, this door's locked. I guess we'll give up.
What are we going to do?
The assassins and the mob then proceeded to loot the castle. They were just looting the whole thing. So eventually they were found because their house was being torn up. Their castle.
I'm pretty sure if they stabbed the dude with 9 different people, they're going to be okay breaking down the door.
Yeah. They busted in, and Caterina was there with her family, all her little kids, and they were detained.
Great, all in one spot. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for gathering up for us. Makes you easy to detain. The fortress of Ravaldino refused to surrender to the mob. Caterina convinced her captors that on behalf of her dead husband, she could help with the negotiations and get the castle to surrender. She's like, send me in, coach. I got this. I'm an excellent lady of this. The lady of... Shoot, what's their city named? Forlì. The Lady of Forlì. Her captors agreed. They were like, okay, fine, but we're going to keep your kids and your mom and your sisters. So don't fuck with us. Like, we're keeping them.
Children.
Mm-hmm. Caterina was taken to the fortress, and when she got there, the guy who was in charge of the fortress, he was like, no, we have to sign this inside. And they were like, fine, but like, get in, get out. Like, we don't have all day. So she went to go inside the castle, and as she was entering the fortress, she paused, turned to her captors, and made a rude hand gesture.
You'll be remembered.
Thanks for listening.
This episode was brought to you by my Patreon supporters, my patrons. And you've reached the end of part 1. The rest of the episode will be on Patreon, so join us over there if you want to hear those. You can join for free and get ad-free versions of all my videos, so see you there.